is right now.
Coming to 6.
No standing still.
20 seconds.
Only one choice now.
Here we go. All right, come around one. Stand by, Dr. Phill. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Today on an all-new Dr. Phill. Life after lockdown.
My 13-year-old is out of control.
You wouldn't understand.
It was just the blind leading the blind.
The only thing that's gonna help me is going to school.
This got to the point where you were ready to leave.
Financially, it's hard. Parenting our daughter is hard. Everything is hard.
How do you two get along? That alone can make a huge difference. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today is going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
Get ready to take care of you. Well, you know, it has been 2.5 years since our country locked down during COVID-19 pandemic. Can you believe it? 2.5 years. Now, masks are off, shelter-in-place mandates have been lifted, and children have returned to school. But life is far from back to normal. Too many families have been damaged or even destroyed by loss of loved ones, financial stress, and being forced to live in close quarters with their loved ones 24/7, all while adapting to the many challenges of remote work and failed distance learning. We are finally emerging from the darkness, but I'm here to tell you that the handling of the pandemic has had long-term catastrophic effects on many families and individuals. Effects that we are just beginning to unpack. Take a look.
There has been a secondary and tragic pandemic running during the COVID pandemic.
It's the dramatic increase in domestic violence as victims have been shut in with their abusers.
New data is highlighting the alarming rise in drug overdose deaths in the U.S. Deaths has climbed since the COVID-19 pandemic started.
New data from the CDC finds that 1 in 5 children live with a significant mental health concern.
Children's Hospital of Colorado declared a state of emergency and youth mental health for the first time ever. Pediatric emergency departments were overrun with kids attempting suicide. Since 2019, the number of kids in need of emergency mental care has doubled.
Schools are back in session, but some students are still dealing with the consequences of the pandemic and what's being called a COVID achievement gap.
Did you feel like you were behind the other students?
My grades were really bad.
Since COVID, my 13-year-old is out of control.
You don't understand.
How can we help you, Ava?
The only thing that's gonna help me is going to school.
Well, what that young girl is expressing really illustrates my exact point. That was Deidre talking to her 13-year-old daughter who could not handle online schooling. Now, here to talk to me about this is Dr. Pearson. She is a legal and organizational analyst who's been covering the pandemic unfolding. And that's a lot to cover. Dr. Pearson, what we just saw in those last 10 seconds of that tape is the perfect example of the anger and frustration that children and teens were feeling and what parents were dealing with during this lockdown much of the time. Would you agree, the frustration?
It was a frustration about a lack of control over their circumstances and their ability to decide what they wanted to do because it was safer at home, so they say.
Yeah, so they say. A lot of things were frustrating to me going into this, and that was, it seemed like the information that was being given out seemed to be changing daily, contradictory oftentimes, and not really based on scientific evidence. Why is that?
Well, there's a really straightforward answer to this, and that is there was no plan followed. They were responding in the moment.
Oh, look, we're the most sophisticated country in the world, supposedly. We're supposed to anticipate and have readiness for all eventualities, right? And you're telling me that they shut down the #1 economy in the world, they shut down the schools, they wiped out thousands and thousands of mom and pop businesses that had been worked on for 40, 50 years, and pulled kids out of schools and created gaps that will never be closed. And it was a knee jerk.
So there are 3 factors here. There's motivation, there's knowledge, and there's infrastructure. There was a plan that existed. And in fact, just prior to the inauguration of the new president, there had been exercises where they went through this exact scenario. And that's the thing that is so infuriating. It was this exact scenario. And when it counted, 23 of the people who attended that training, if you will, were no longer in the administration.
So you're saying the Obama administration had a plan, the Trump administration put it in a drawer and adios to people that knew what was going on, and we were left with a huge information gap.
There was an information gap, motivation gap, and an infrastructure gap.
Did y'all feel like we were making this up as we went along at the time? Did it feel like you were getting a different message all the time? Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, do this, don't do that? If you're frustrated about it now, raise your hand about what took place. Okay. If you think, no, they did the best they could because this was something new, raise your hand. Yeah, I did not feel that way. And I said so early on. I said that the way they're doing this and shutting this down is going to create more problems than the virus itself. And I think those problems are just starting to unfold, and I think we're going to be paying a very high price for decades to come.
I agree with you.
Deidre, we just saw a tiny bit of what you've been dealing with at home over the past 2.5 years. Let's take a look.
I don't know how to put it into words, and you won't stop rubbing everything in my face.
My 13-year-old, she's vindictive, manipulative. She is a liar, a thief, just downright nasty. Whew. Boy, those words are hard to say about your own child.
Ava, this is heartbreaking.
You wouldn't understand.
We do understand. I don't understand that you lied. I don't.
You don't understand anything.
I surely was not prepared for distance learning.
There is no point to me of online school.
There is a point.
No, there isn't. There is no reward.
Her behaviors has affected everyone.
Stay out of my life.
She says openly how much she hates my son. Her actions really make me miserable. She has pushed me to the point of thinking about taking my son and just leaving.
Well, Deidre, you live just a half a mile away from a neighboring school district where schools were open and kids were doing just fine. They were actually going to class, right?
Yes, sir.
But she felt really isolated.
Very much so, she did.
And remote learning did not work for her?
Oh, it definitely did not work for her. 6th grade is the beginning of middle school.
Right.
So, you know, obviously with distance learning, we're on the computer and most kids had their cameras off, so she just was so disconnected.
Your husband, Jerry, is joining us virtually, and thank you for joining us as well. Jerry, you watched this unfolding, and when a child gets frustrated and can't master what's put in front of them and is not getting rewards from it, not having success experiences, it just got worse, and it got worse for her.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the hardest thing as a parent is to watch your child struggle and not have the tools or anything to calm them down or to take that pain away that's so obvious. It's a struggle.
Let me tell you, you guys didn't invent this problem. This was happening in homes across the country over and over and over again. It was a nightmare. I mean, it didn't work. Now, Simone, the pandemic struck just as you were entering your final 2 years of high school, correct?
Yes.
What was the impact? What was the feeling of that?
So for me, I'm a student athlete, so I've played basketball my entire life, and I really leaned on that to support me through college because I knew my parents weren't going to be financially able to do that. So I knew that basketball was going to be my key to getting in. But with the pandemic, I was shut down completely from that. So I knew I had to focus on academics and to get me to college. But my teachers were just really focused on trying to understand Zoom and online learning, so they didn't really have enough time to prepare us and teach us everything that we needed to know, especially going into college. So with that, my senior year, I was very, very ill prepared. I did not know that I had to make 2 different applications for my college and for the dorms. So I only applied just for the school. And now I am in college, have no dorms, and I go to school in LA, and I live in the Bay Area. So it's very, very hard for me.
Yeah. Did this have to happen?
The way that we could have avoided this is if at the local level where education happens, if we could have had a plan. We have plans for active shooters, but we don't have plans for what to do when we can't go to school for a long period of time.
They shut the schools down for 2 years. And when they shut them down, did they have a plan to open them back up?
No.
Because it seems to me that they should have had a plan to reopen the schools the day they shut them down. Coming up, I have someone who knows exactly about these problems that families are facing. We're going to add him to the conversation when we come back.
Parents aren't equipped to deal with that. The parents are fearful and depressed. So it was just the blind leading the blind.
And Deidre, this got to the point where you were ready to leave, right? And later, what are you proud of about your family?
I'm proud that we're still together.
So you're hanging in.
By a thread.
Okay. Well, we need to put the fun back in dysfunctional. 70 million children will be forever affected by what they've gone through with the pandemic, how things were handled when our country was locked down, the pandemic that they've endured. All of us will be. Now, Deidre and Jerry's 13-year-old daughter and Simone, Carrie's daughter, are just 2 of them. The good news is that help is here, and he has what I believe is the real beginnings of a roadmap to help families navigate out of the chaos and back into a healthy dynamic. My good friend and world-renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Charles Sophie, joins me today. His new book, Family Values, Reset Trust, Boundaries, and Connection with Your Child, does a deep dive into the issues so many parents face with their children, both pre- and post-pandemic, and gives tools to address the areas that need the most attention and gives guidance down a path that reconnects families to their values. Dr. Sophie, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
How much did this affect kids at all ages when they got isolated?
Significantly, just the very fact of the feeling of fear. Kids are scared, or we were all scared. There's a bug out there we could get. You can't breathe. You got to put this thing on your mouth. So anybody with anxiety issues, they got amplified. OCD started to, be emerging that may not have even emerged to that level of symptoms. So there's a huge amount of that. And the more anxiety people had, the more it spills into a mood disorder, and they're depressed. They have no treatment. They have nobody to help them, and they're stuck in their homes. And parents aren't equipped to deal with that. The parents are fearful and depressed. So it was just the blind leading the blind.
Mm-hmm. And Deidre, this got to the point where you were ready to leave, right? It just...
Absolutely.
You had all you could take.
Yes. It has definitely been really tough.
When you have a child that's been diagnosed with something even before all this, and then you don't have a teacher who's able to eyeball them during the day like they would in a school to be able to say their ADHD is out of control or they're not paying attention, it's up to you. While you're trying to work and cook and shop and parent and like it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely. It's tough.
And nobody wanted this to happen, but you live with the aftermath about this. I mean, what's been your experience with this? What's the hardest thing that you guys are having to face in digging out of the pandemic?
Just On the laptop, I feel like I was teaching myself pretty much. Like, I had to go to get tutoring for help, and I already have anxiety, so with the COVID and just going out, I was a little scared. I missed interaction with college students, within how to stay inside, some anxiety worse. I mean, I'm better now, but I still miss like social interactions with college students.
Right. Yeah. And things you took for granted before are harder now, right?
Yeah.
Things you used to do just naturally, it's kind of hard to get back into that at this point. A lot of us have found that, right? You know, the thing that I love about your book, Family Values, is that you say this has to happen one family at a time, and there's got to be a plan.
Yes. Because if you're going to rely on help in your community, charity begins at home. I talk about parenting beginning with you. If you're not a solid parent, you can't help your kid. You got to take over your house. You got to fix yourself. And nobody knows how to do it. So there's a simple book. It's not that hard. And then you at least get yourself grounded, and you have a foundation and a structure to then build within, and then maybe get outside help.
Yeah, relationships headed downhill fast for some people during the pandemic when faced with financial strain, anxiety, disagreements on how to parent children during the pandemic, how to get education underway, how to keep it going. We're going to talk about all of that after the break and how to find pride in your own family. We're going to talk about all of that when we come back.
Pick something and it's hard. Financially, it's hard. Parenting our daughter is hard. Everything's hard.
How do you two get along?
We took on a lot of financial hardship, and now more than ever, we struggle to parent our daughter.
We're polar opposites in parenting.
Carson is a dictator in his parenting.
I always feel like I'm the bad guy.
Our daughter is being done a disservice by constantly being around somebody who is so grumpy. Walking around with anger and irritation radiating off of him, and only feeling happy when he's playing video games. I would love to find a way to fix our relationship, and if not, how we move forward.
Oh boy, have you come to the right place. On the right day, at the right time. What's been the hardest thing?
I mean, pick something and it's hard. Financially, it's hard. Parenting our daughter is hard. Making sure that she is on the same path that other kids would be on if the pandemic wouldn't have happened. Like, she's 6 and she can't barely write. She can spot read, but you know, you feel so much pressure to have them be the best that they can be. And I mean, everything's hard.
Mm-hmm. Carson, do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you two get along?
Not so well anymore.
It hasn't been good for a while, but the pandemic has made it very clear that, I mean, that we need to work harder, that we need to be better for her.
Mm-hmm. What are you proud of about your family?
I'm proud that we're still together. We're still making it work, albeit dysfunctional at times. I'm proud that every time we fight and I ask him to leave, he says, no, I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together. We're here. I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'm proud of those things, the trying and the wanting to be better.
Well, so you're hanging in.
Right. By a thread.
Okay. Well, we need to put the fun back in dysfunctional. Right. You're hanging in there. That's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about having pride in the family and really focusing on the family unit as being something special. Talk about that, because that's important.
It's not just special. It's a very unique thing. And if you don't value that and respect it and respect each other, even when you're arguing, you still respect each other. He's able to say, I'm not going anywhere, even though you're acting crazy. You know, you just don't lose your mind because you come within a boundary of respect of each other. Yeah. There's got to be a limit because you value your family And what you value and how you build that is what's going to give Lorelai the view of the world. She'll go out and value the same things. But if you're beating the heck out of each other, she's not going to value it. So you have to have parameters, and that's built around a value system.
I remember one time hearing our oldest son telling a friend of his, "We don't do that." And they said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, the McGraws just don't do that." And I remember at that point thinking, that's really a good thing. There's a standard that he just attributed it just because that's who we are, and we don't do that. How many of you grew up with that kind of code in your family? You can't wait for the government to fix it. You can't wait for the school to fix it. You've got to say, we're going to fix our family, and it begins with, I'm going to treat myself and each other with dignity and respect. I remember one time hearing our oldest son telling a friend of his, "We don't do that." And they said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, the McGraws just don't do that." And I remember at that point thinking, that's really a good thing. There's a standard that he just attributed it just because that's who we are, and we don't do that. How many of you grew up with that kind of code in your family? Okay, some of you did, some of you didn't. That, to me, that's what family values.
Yes.
There's a really good foreword to this book. Oh, I wrote it.
All right.
But in the beginning of the foreword, it says he called this family values because he values family.
Right.
And that's so important because you've got to be able to say, we take pride in our family. And we treat ourselves and we treat each other with dignity and respect,
Absolutely, no matter what.
And it starts there. You can't wait for the government to fix it. You can't wait for the school to fix it.
Right.
You've got to say, we're going to fix our family, and it begins with, I'm going to treat myself and each other with dignity and respect. And you have a roadmap called SWEEP.
Right.
And tell us how that works.
It's just simple. It's 5 key areas of your life that you look at as an individual and as your family. And you get on a roadmap to the end goal of where you want to do to fix these issues that come up when you do that SWEEP assessment.
All right, and what are the S?
Sleep.
W?
Work, eating, emotional expression, and play.
Okay, and those seem real simple, but there's a lot more to each one of them. And the important thing is, and let me tell you something else too, this is a big thing. Just attending to something and having a plan, that alone can make a huge difference.
Right.
Just the fact that you say, you know what, I'm going to go home today and I'm going to pay attention to my family and we're going to have a plan. Nothing else other than just the commitment to pay attention to it will make it better. And then if you have a plan with real steps, really get better.
Yeah.
Now, Vanya says she and Carson aren't sleeping in the same room right now. So how important is sleep for Dr. Sophie's SWEEP method? More on that when we come back. She's got to feel overwhelmed. It's like everybody's sailing on and she's getting further and further behind. And at one point they just say, oh, what's the point? I'll never catch up. I'll just go smoke dope or sit out and watch the tree grow. Well, I'm here with Dr. Charles Sophie, who has been working with families across the country before, during, and post-pandemic. And he has seen firsthand the hardships families and children are facing inside and now outside of their homes. Inside the homes when there was pressure on. And, you know, as Dr. Pearson said, look, it doesn't matter how much you pre-plan, you can't plan for everything. Some of this stuff is going to sneak up on you, and you have to go into reaction mode and do what you can. And everybody did a good job in America. I saw people that I know it was hard. They lost jobs. I know that it was difficult economically, and they're wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to be able to pay our rent? Are we going to be able to get by, and then they would lose a loved one and it just break their hearts. And, you know, we kept taping. I think we did 29 shows from home. Some of them we did on cell phones. We did national television shows on cell phones propped up on cookie jars because people just had needs, and we just kept doing it. And I was so inspired by the spirit of people. But fatigue sets in, and it got hard for people. And now depression has set in with a lot of people, and loneliness has set in with a lot of people. And days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, and we're now 2.5 years into this. And you'd been working on this book for a while, and I really pressured you to accelerate this because you say it starts at home with the family, and you've come up with this stepwise plan. And talk about sleep. Why did you start with that?
Well, because if we don't have a certain amount of time every night on a regular basis consistently for your brain to slow down and recharge, you're not going to be who you should be the next day. And every day that you don't sleep, you're less you every day. You're more intolerant, you're more irritable, you're not productive, you don't feel good, and then you have all this other outside stuff happening, you're really going to plummet.
Yeah. And if somebody told me you have to make someone psychotic and you can control one thing,
right,
it would be sleep. That is so important.
Yeah, it's vital. Your brain needs to recharge.
Yeah.
And it needs to be quality sleep, not just sleep.
Right. Okay, talk about work.
Work. Well, for children, it's their 8 hours of schoolwork during the day. Is it the right setting? And now we know more than ever it's probably not the right setting for a lot of kids because it got worse. But is it the right setting? Are they learning, and are they getting out of those 8 hours what they should be? And for us, I mean, do we spend that time, 8 hours or whatever it is, in a quality, productive way? Do you feel a purpose? Whether you're staying home and you're a housewife or a house husband, whatever, or you're out doing something, you know, is it purposeful for you? Is it getting you on your path to your purpose?
Yeah, I think it's really important in talking to your children, and we've talked about this many times, is children tend to compare themselves. It's so important that you influence your child to compare themselves to themselves.
Right.
Like, how are they doing today versus how they were doing yesterday? Not how they're doing compared to the kid next to them or the kid down the street, because they don't know how that kid's doing. That kid puts on a social mask and comes to school and they go, oh, wow, they seem like they're doing great. Well, you don't really know how that kid's doing. You just know how that child appears to be doing. Right. You know, encourage your child to compare themselves to themselves. Right. You know, how was I doing yesterday in math or reading, or how am I doing yesterday in mood versus how I'm doing today?
Right.
That's the only person they control.
Absolutely.
And if they do that with their work, then they can learn that little advances add up to big results across time. And your daughter, I mean, she's got to feel overwhelmed. It's like everybody seems like they're sailing on and she's getting further and further behind. And at one point they just say, oh, what's the point? I'll never catch up.
Exactly.
So what the hell? I'll just go smoke dope or sit out and watch the tree grow.
Right.
But what she's got to do is set some personal goals and say, look, I'm going to do some things for me today. And let me tell you, it takes 1,000 attaboys, 1,000 attagirls to erase one you're not good enough. And you got to catch her doing some things right if you have to hide behind a bush to do it, because sometime during the day, she's going to do something right, something sweet, something good. Even if it's brush her hair, you got to catch her doing something right and say, I'm really proud of you. And that's about putting this dignity back in there. And, you know, you say you didn't get it filled out right and didn't get your dorm. Are you going to class?
Do you guys have a shared hobby?
Not anymore.
No.
Right. But you should.
I'm a really big fan of board games, so I'm trying to get Lorelai to do board games.
She's not. Look, I'm talking about a hobby for you two, to build your relationship.
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I'm with you. Board games are like problems in a box.
Right.
Okay.
You say you didn't get it filled out right and didn't get your dorm. Are you going to class?
Yes, but I've missed class several days already, and we just started last week, so I'm just a bit behind.
Well, how many days have you made it?
Only the first 3 days.
That's 3 days more than you did it before.
Yeah.
I mean, really, find something about what you're doing to say that's 3. Now, next week, I'll do 4.
I mean, build on
the
your
next week,
strengths.
I'll do 5. Really, you've got to get off your back and give yourself some encouragement here. You've really got to do that and find your way back.
I mean, don't you think it's wonderful that you're commuting like that?
Yeah,
I mean-
I'm flying from home and back.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
which
lot.
is not a way to
It's
do
super
it,
stressful.
but
You're doing it.
you've got to encourage yourself. You've got to come up with a plan here. And you talk about that you got to have structure and a schedule to this, and that's really, really important. So talk about eating a little bit.
Eating. I mean, obviously we eat every day. Do we eat good? Do we eat like the right foods? Are we eating with other people? Are we sitting there alone, isolated because of the depression or whatever that's happening? So it's eating properly, eating at the right time. Low blood sugar can really make a child or anybody act in a way that looks mental health, and it's really not. They just didn't eat enough, or they didn't eat the right calories. So really looking at when you're eating, what you're eating, who you're eating with, it all matters.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Like
Now,
garbage
talk
in,
about
garbage
emotional expression, because this is so important.
I mean, emotional expression has very many variations. One, for adults, it's intimacy. Is their marriage where it needs to be? If it's not, you've got to work on it, because that's the role model she's going to look for in a marriage. And, are you dealing with your own emotions as an individual? And then teaching them how to deal with their emotions, whether that's a feelings chart for a child. Some kids don't even know how to describe anger. They just do it. They need to be able to look at a picture and say, this is how I feel, if they can't articulate it. They shouldn't just be acting it out. So it's getting somebody in touch with the knowledge and their emotions, their head connected to their heart.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's P?
P is play. We all play. Play by yourself and play with others. So hobbies. Many people don't have any hobbies. Hobbies are very self-soothing. Things that you do by yourself, whether it's reading, needlepoint, cooking, gardening. You need that soothing therapy time for yourself, and then things you do with others, socialization. Do you guys have a shared hobby?
Not anymore.
No.
Right. But you should.
I'm a really big fan of board games, so I'm trying to get Lorelai to do board games.
She's not. Look, I'm talking about a hobby for you two, to build your relationship.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm with you. Board games are like problems in a box.
Right.
I don't got time for that. Like, I worked all day. I would say the last hobby we really had was Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
Like, we made that a weekly thing, talked about the episode, talked about things, but
It's bonding.
yeah, it hasn't,
You need
there
to go
hasn't
back
been
to that.
any
Yeah,
of
you
that.
bonded over the massive destruction of the human race. I get it. That's good. But whatever gets you together.
Right.
So look, what's the first step in helping our most vulnerable children and families that were affected by all of this? It's really something that begins in your home with your family. We'll be right back. This country is in trouble right now. We know that. We know how divided it is. I've done topics here where I felt like I had to have on body armor with people so divided. There's divisiveness in this country right now. But let me tell you something. You don't want to be divided at home. And that's the key. You think it starts with this family unit, and if that falls apart, the society falls apart.
Exactly.
When we talk about having dignity and respect within the family, how does that start? What's the first conversation that you recommend people have in here when they sit down? Somebody has to be the one
The head of
that initiates, right?
Right. And puts out there, are we on the same page? Do we want to value ourselves? Do we value ourselves? Why do we want to be a family? What does that mean to you? What does it mean to you and each member? So that you understand what it means to each member, so that the value that you're going to have as a whole is a piece of everybody. And so when you build that value model and that's the goal, then you build the plan to work toward it. And everybody has a stake in it.
And the more awkward this might seem in your own situation, the more you need to do it.
Right.
Because this should be natural. This should be instilled in every family. It's been a long, long time since I was in high school. A a long time. I had hair. It's been so long. But I remember a friend of mine was over one night, and this was the toughest kid I've ever met in my life. I mean, he'd fight a buzzsaw, and everybody was afraid of this kid. And we were getting ready to go out, and we were going down the stairs, heading out the door, and my mother said, whoa, where are you going? I said, well, we're going to the basketball game. And she said, oh, no, you're not, because it was really icy out. And you didn't argue with my mother, so we just turned and went back upstairs. And we got back upstairs, and this tough kid was looking out the window, and he had tears running out of his eyes. And I thought, man, he must have really wanted to go to that basketball game. And I said, you know, what's wrong? And he just turned around and said, I just wish once in my life somebody would care enough about me to tell me I couldn't go somewhere.
Amen.
Because of the roads. And I thought, wow, I understand why this kid's so tough and so mean all the time. So when you see that anger, you got to look past it. Right. And I just want all of you to really think about, what's my family stand for? Because if, you know, there are millions of people listening to this right now. If we have families that say, you know what, I got to quit bitching, and I just got to say, what am I doing in my family?
Yes.
Am I valuing my own family? Am I taking pride in my family? And are we living with dignity and respect and treating each other with dignity and respect? It's going to make a huge difference. And if they follow this stepwise plan that you have, then, you know, we can start walking our way back here.
On our own.
This is not a gap that can't be closed,
No,
and
not
we
at
are
all.
resilient people.
Yes.
And we can do this.
Make it work.
It starts with you. It starts at home.
Yes,
So,
100%.
But congratulations
Thank you.
on this book. It really is good. I highly recommend it. I want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Dr. Pearson. Thank you for weighing in with your perspective. I also want to thank you, Dr. Sophie, for sharing useful tools to help navigate through the mess and chaos that has been left for the past 2.5 years. His book, Family Values, Reset Trust, Boundaries, and Connection with Your Child, is now available for purchase anywhere books are sold. And I think everyone can benefit by having a copy of this in their home. And everyone in our studio audience today is going home with a copy. So all of you go home with a copy. For more information about today's episode, or if you would like to share your story, log on to drphill.com. If you want to add your voice to the conversation, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And if you're in the LA area, we'd love to have you join us up here on stage in our studio audience. Just go to drphill.com, click on Be Part of the Audience for all the details. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to my podcast, Fill in the Blanks, where I provide critical information on some of the most important issues that you guys are facing today. Robin does the same thing on her podcast, I've Got a Secret. She really talks to a lot of thought leaders about the secret to their success, the things that they've done to be innovative in this life and in this world. We will see you next time. Thanks for being here.
Today on Dr. Phil.
Connor McCowan is charged with murder in the stabbing death of Andrew Singler.
Her brother killed her boyfriend.
I lost my two best friends.
Was it murder?
He could have called 911, but instead he left him lying there and ran away.
Or self-defense?
My son was attacked.
Why did he walk into the apartment with an open knife?
It wasn't open.
He said it was. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
I hate to see people suffering, and you've heard long enough.
Stand by, Dr. Phill.
I'm going to get you the help that you need.
5, 4.
This is going to be a changing day in your life. Today, a Dr. Phill exclusive. A college student with dreams of becoming a dentist is brutally murdered. The killer? His beautiful girlfriend's 19-year-old brother. Now, headlines about the shocking murder had everyone talking. Michigan teen to face trial in stabbing death of sister's boyfriend. Text messages led to murder conviction of Connor McCowan. Connor McCowan, 19, sentenced to 20 to 60 years in prison for murder of Andrew Singler. That one fateful night 9 months ago ruined the lives of 2 young men. One sits locked behind bars for the next 20 to 60 years, while the other lies in a coffin. What sparked their deadly fight? Take a look.
Connor McCowan is charged with murder in the February 23rd stabbing death of Michigan State University senior Andrew Singler.
Court records say there had been an argument between Singler and McCowan's sister earlier in the evening that Connor McCowan, quote-unquote, took exception to. Police say McCowan stabbed Singler the morning of February 23rd. During a fight at the Castle Point apartment Singler shared with McCowan's sister and another roommate. He suffered multiple stab wounds, one to the arm and one to the heart.
Teenager's murder trial focused on text messages sent just minutes before the stabbing death of an MSU senior.
Texts read in court illustrate the violent and threatening texts Connor and Singler sent each other, ultimately leading up to their deadly fight.
Come on, let's do this. Talk behind my back. I'll destroy you any day. Then you wouldn't have a problem if I showed up at your apartment right now then, huh? Come on over, I'll embarrass you.
Tears fall from the face of Connor McCowan as he takes the stand today. Upon approaching the apartment, McCowan said he took the knife out of the center console of his car.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I was trying to be on the safe side. I was scared by it. I thought he was going to kill me. I've never seen him that bad.
McCowan said he used the knife to defend himself.
I grabbed my knife in my pocket, and I just had it like this. I needed him off me. I tried to get him off me.
Connor McCowan sat straight-faced as Judge Kennedy read the verdict in his murder trial.
Second-degree murder, guilty.
But behind McCowan, family and friends sobbed, hugged, and wiped away tears.
Well, Connor's parents, Randy and Judy McCowan, and his sister Shay, are desperate to prove the teenager they know and love isn't a cold-blooded killer. They say Connor did not intend to murder Shay's boyfriend, Andrew. He was attacked and acting in self-defense. Take a look.
The night that Andrew died, we were at the bar. He gave me a piggyback ride. He slipped and I fell off his back. He played it off like it wasn't a big deal. He was very drunk and he called me a he called me a whore, he called me
Shay texted Connor that she and Andrew had been in a fight.
If Andrew and I got into a fight, he was a mediator.
Connor was getting all sorts of calls and texts and threatening messages from Andrew.
Andrew baited Connor 15 times in text messages to try to get him over there to that apartment, threatening to kill him and to stick him.
When Connor got to the apartment complex, he looked at his phone. One text said, "Hurry up so I can kill you." Connor was afraid to go up there without having any protection for himself.
The pocket knife was in his car. He thought, I better put this knife in my pocket. Connor was buzzed into the apartment. When Connor got there, the door opened.
And Andrew flew at him and started punching him in the head.
Connor said he couldn't get away from Andrew, so he took out his knife and cut him.
Andrew grabbed his stomach and then went down on the ground.
I got a call from Andrew's mom, and she said, Andrew's dead. We don't want you at the funeral, and we hope your brother rots in prison for the rest of his life.
Connor came home, woke me up, and told me what had happened.
It was just an awful nightmare for everybody. They arrested my son and read him his rights and took him to jail.
I lost my 2 best friends in the matter of seconds.
It's been 9 months now, and nothing will ever be the same again.
Now, Connor's mother, Judy, Father Randy, and Sister Shay are joining us today. And first off, look, I'm terribly sorry that this has happened. 20 to 60 years, you all think is ridiculously harsh, correct?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Why is this penalty so harsh in your opinion?
Well, I think obviously Connor was trying to defend himself that evening. It was clear. I don't know if it's 20 to 60 years, if it's just an eye for an eye, and let's throw away another life because they lost a son. I mean, I get it. It's horrific that they lost their son, but he was like a son to me, and I've lost 3 kids now, not just one. So
I feel awful what's happened to Andrew, but my son didn't do anything illegal that night. He was defending himself. He was attacked.
Why did you decide to get your brother involved in the fight?
Connor is my best friend, and the 3 of us, Connor, Andrew, and I, we were best friends, hung out every single day. And anytime Andrew and I would be in an argument and things would get out of hand, I'd give Connor a call and he'd come over, and he wouldn't get in the middle of things, but his presence would mediate the situation. Mm-hmm. We'd go back to laughing and having fun. And that night I was so overwhelmed and I was in so much pain that I just texted him.
Did your brother take it the way I did, that your rib had been broken because Andrew had attacked you?
I'm not sure how he interpreted it, but my text message didn't wake him up. He read the text message after Andrew had called him once, and he asked me, "Are you okay?" And then I told him I was okay.
Do you feel like you started the dominoes falling here when you texted Connor?
I don't think so, because my text message didn't wake Connor up that night. If Andrew had never called him, Connor would have read the text message in the morning, and I could have explained then.
Dozens of messages were sent between Shay, Andrew, and Connor the night of Andrew's death, as well as like 100 calls from Andrew looking for Shay. Will they prove Connor was fighting for his life? We'll be right back.
I get messages weekly from people I don't know, blaming me that I should be in prison instead of my brother. I received a picture of Andrew saying that I'm the reason why he's dead. It's just so painful. People will never understand what I'm dealing with inside.
My friend, he just been stabbed. I'm driving to Phill Hospital right now. I just got home to my apartment, and there he was. I don't know what to do.
Do you want to stop and get an ambulance? How's he doing?
Andrew, you with me, dude? I don't think he's doing too well. He's not responsive.
All right, so we either need you to stop and get an ambulance coming to your location, or you need to get him to the hospital.
I can get him to the hospital right now.
Okay, so when you came home to your apartment, you found him in the apartment?
Yes, he's laying right there.
And is he unconscious right now?
No, he's just breathing really hard.
So where in his body is he stabbed?
I don't know if it's a lung puncture or not. I just picked him up and grabbed him and went.
Is he able to talk to you right now?
Andrew, can you say something to me? Anything, man? No, he's not saying anything now.
If he does, actually answer your questions, you need to ask him who did it.
Okay. We're almost there, dude. Hang tight, man.
What's your name?
It's Tyler. I'm his roommate.
Okay, is he breathing?
No, it's almost like he's choking or something. So I'm about to pull into the emergency in the ER.
That was the 911 call made by Andrew's roommate. Now, during the trial, one of the most damning pieces of evidence was that after stabbing Andrew, Connor did not call 911. Instead, he ran. He drove all the way home, ditched the knife on the way, woke up his father, and told him what happened. Then instead of calling 911 from their home, Randy and Connor drove back to Andrew's house to check on him. Now, if someone had made that call sooner, would Andrew still be alive? Hindsight's 20/20, but the prosecution made a point of all of this, correct? If he said it was self-defense, once he had incapacitated him and was no longer threatened by him, he could have called for assistance, but instead he ran and threw away the knife. And
he was afraid, I mean, afterward, but he never thought that that wound was something that would kill, that Andrew would die from.
Well, let's take a look at some of the texts that went back and forth between them. It was clearly inflammatory, but there was a very unusual undertone of civility between the two at the same time. Connor to Andrew, blank, I'll knock your teeth in, watch who the you're talking to, you told me where you are, and I'm already awake. I have no problem finding you just to blank whoop your ass. Then Andrew back to Connor, oh, you're so hard, Connor, I'm so scared. Then Connor to Shay, okay, well, I'm about to get in my car and find him and beat the out of him. He's saying all of this blank about you and cussing at me and blank like that. So did you get that text? So you knew he was going to find him.
I didn't think he would actually do it. I think he was just really worked up that we were waking him up with this.
Andrew to Connor, I'm home, you blank idiot. Andrew to Connor, good call though. Connor to Andrew, then you're just adding fuel to the fire then, and I'll say anything to your face, blank. What makes you think I'd be afraid of you, all 5'11" of you? Ha! Andrew to Connor, good one, Connor. You're barely taller than me, blank. Andrew to Connor, ouch, you really got me. Andrew to Connor, you're pathetic. Connor to Andrew, then you wouldn't have a problem if I showed up at your apartment right now then, huh? Andrew to Connor, come over, I'll blank embarrass you. So that's their exchange. I mean, it sounds like a couple of little kids.
It does, it was horrible.
And then this one, which I thought was interesting, Andrew to Connor, blank you. Connor to Andrew, 20 minutes. Andrew to Connor, blank you. Connor to Andrew, I gotta get gas first. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's like, this doesn't sound like a homicidal maniac to me. When Connor's saying that, Andrew to Connor, great, hurry up. Andrew to Connor, so I can blank kill you. Then Connor to Andrew, will do. Andrew to Connor, not literally, but your ass needs to be beaten, and guess what, blank, I'm going to blank make sure it happens. So it's like, okay, I'm coming over, but I got to stop and get some gas. Okay, hurry up. And he says, I'm going to kill you. Well, wait, I don't mean really kill you, but this is happening on two levels.
I personally think him saying I'm stopping for gas, and it was like saying, you still have time to apologize to me, you know? You still have time to make this right.
Why did he walk into the apartment with an open knife?
It wasn't open when he walked into
he
the
said
apartment.
It was.
He didn't go into the apartment.
Connor said as he got out of the car, he opened the knife.
And put it in his pocket. Yeah.
You understand how a prosecutor uses this and how a jury hears it. He goes from location A to location B. He shows up, opens a deadly weapon, puts it in his pocket, and then goes to the guy and then says it was self-defense. You understand?
I understand how it appears,
Regardless
but it
of
is
that,
legal to do. You can legally put a pocket knife into your pocket in our state. You can open it in our state. So what he did, yes, it doesn't sound that great, but what he did was legal. He was afraid for, you know, he was hoping to God he didn't have to use it.
I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not saying it's illegal, but I'm telling you from having debriefed thousands of jurors that they're looking at state of mind.
Okay.
And he went in with a deadly weapon. All right, next, Shay and Andrew's relationship. Were they a volatile, toxic couple? Did Shay keep their troubles hidden from everyone close to her until it was too late? Is Connor a good boy who was legitimately afraid? We'll talk about all of that next.
Connor does not deserve to be in prison right now. He is an overall great guy.
We had about 40 letters that were written to the judge asking for leniency in his sentencing.
He's got a big heart, and he wouldn't go out of his way to hurt anybody.
It's been a trial full of tears as emotional testimony on the life and death of Andrew Singler plays out in the courtroom. The prosecuting attorney says Connor made the intentional decision to go to Singler's and knew how serious it was to bring the knife.
Andrew Singler was murdered by the defendant.
I think the prosecution and the family wanted an eye for an eye.
I was in shock. The judge read that the jury found him guilty of second-degree murder.
When I heard the verdict, I was devastated. I just wanted to take him and hold him and keep him with me.
We all yelled, "We love you, Connor. It's not over. We'll continue to fight for you."
Connor McCowan says the night he stabbed his sister's boyfriend, Andrew, that he was punched in the head and that he acted in self-defense. In fact, Connor doesn't use the word stab. He says swiped. So he did not perceive it as having stabbed someone, but instead he described a swiping motion to get him away from him. Did you have a relationship with Andrew that was violent? Was he violent towards you?
He was violent towards me.
Did you tell anyone about that?
I called the police, but then I hung up because I didn't want anybody to know.
So you never made a complaint, and apparently you never told your parents.
No.
Because you feared they would say, that's it, no more, which you would have.
Absolutely.
Did Connor have bruises or cuts or whatever that were documented by photograph that night of having been beaten about the head?
When
by
he came
Andrew?
home to talk to us,
I mean, this is this a picture from that night?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see above his left eye, there's an abrasion there.
Yep.
He said he got hit on the top
On
of
the
the
top
head,
of
and
his
I
head,
also saw
too.
some scratches below his T-shirt line because he mentioned that, and the witness testimony also states that there was tussling going on. Kind of call it, wrestling, tussling after he'd been assaulted and hit 2 to 3 times in the head. Connor said there was one on the top of his head, which nobody documented. But I also saw scratches because he said he had his head down, and he said so he cut him trying to get himself to exit himself from that situation. And the minute that he could, of course, Andrew fell, and then Connor told me the roommate said, "Run," which I said, "Why do you think that was?" And he said, because he thought, okay, now's your time to get away. The roommate was the one that tried to hold Andrew back. He said with all his might, Andrew got past him out into the hallway. Connor was not in the apartment, and the roommate testified he landed a haymaker. So if Connor had a concussion, we don't know how one acts at that point and what they feel in their head that they need to do to get out of that situation. So
Was Andrew armed in any way?
No.
He didn't have a gun
Just
or a
his
knife
fists.
or a
there was a knife right inside the house, but he didn't have it on him. No.
He
no.
entered the building with an open knife in his pocket, inflicted an injury on someone, and left him lying there and ran away and threw away the weapon. You
I
get
understand that.
those are non-disputed, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Did you consider calling 911 when he came and woke you up and said, I cut him?
I did not. I'm a dad. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an attorney, I'm not a doctor. I thought, okay, he said he cut him. I said, did you see any blood? He said, no. He fell. I ran to get away from the situation, so immediately tried to contact Andrew. No response. Went over there immediately, you know. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. It was 4 in the morning. I just was awoken by this and in shock and not knowing how to handle it.
You say he certainly didn't murder someone, but what did he do wrong here?
I think it would have been smarter for him not to have gone over there.
Turn off the phone, not respond.
Do you think the jury made the right decision here?
Absolutely not.
This is on appeal?
Yes, sir. We will be appealing that.
Have you spoken to Andrew's parents?
No.
No.
We've reached out on day one. They've denied us any contact.
How is Connor doing
Horrible.
at this point?
They've diagnosed him as severely depressed, post-traumatic stress, and so he's not doing well.
My experience, having spent most of my professional career in the court system as a trial science consultant, juries tend to get it right. They just almost always do. And if the result is unjust, it's generally because of what they were told or not told.
Mm-hmm. There's tons they weren't told. So.
All right, we'll be right back. Alicia says her husband never laid a hand on her and never threatened to kill her. She says his verbal and psychological abuse didn't leave bruises, but it hurt just as much. When she finally had the courage to leave him, the unthinkable happened.
Ambushed and almost killed on her way into work.
Last week, Alicia Waters was shot several times by her estranged husband before he killed himself.
Leading up to this deadly day in Fort Thomas, police concluded that Dennis Mathis had become enraged because of his estranged wife, Alicia Waters' relationship with her new boyfriend. The couple was going through a divorce. Police say on the morning of August 6th, Mathis arrived early at the one place where he knew he would find at least Waters, at her job in Fort Thomas.
And from my witnesses, that when she arrived at the scene, he came running from the building between two cars and ambushed her right there in the lot.
Mathis purchased a gun the day before the shooting.
Since being shot 5 times, Alicia Waters continues to heal.
Well, Alicia is not here today. She's not here because she's in the hospital. She's joining us via satellite from Shepherd Center, one of the nation's top rehabilitation hospitals for spinal cord and brain injuries. And Elisa is with her brother, Kurt. So, Elisa, Kurt, I'm glad to meet you and terribly, terribly sorry for the circumstance. Take me through the moment that this happened and you got shot.
I remember everything. I remember walking into my place of employment, and when you walk in, there's an elevator with 3 flights. I, of course, was waiting for the 3rd floor. I kind of felt somebody behind me, and I turned to look, and he was standing behind me with a gun pointed at me with the most evil look in his eyes that I've ever seen, almost satanic, I guess you could say. And he started shooting, and I fell to the ground. I begged him to stop. He shot a few more times. Thank God the elevator door was open. I managed to get my head to the elevator, let it bang my head against the wall a few times to play dead. I believe he shot me one more time, and the next thing I knew, he had shot himself in the face and fell to the ground.
And this was after a period of time that you had actually gotten away from him, correct?
Yes, sir. I've been gone approximately 5, maybe 5.5 months.
You tried to get a restraining order, but the judge would not grant one. Why?
She said that he was, that he wouldn't harm me, that there was no harm. She saw no reason to grant this.
Because there was no threat of physical violence.
Correct.
Kurt, you look at this from the outside, and it's frustrating to you that the system failed your sister.
Well, of course it is. I mean, she did, well, in my eyes, everything that she could to prevent the situation from happening. She went and got the EPO, and just because she hadn't been, hit and there was no bruising, it was denied.
Sometimes people just don't understand two things. Number one, that abuse can be just as hurtful if it is verbal and emotional and environmental in terms of being controlled and isolated. And they don't understand how quickly it accelerates from that sort of abuse to physical and life-threatening abuse. And we know that one of the most dangerous times is when you are separated from your abuser. It's called separation assault, because abusers want to control, they want to dominate, they want to be able to get real tight grip on you to make sure you do what you want them to do. And when that grip loosens, then they panic and they go to the next level. They go to something desperate. And Alicia, thank you so much for coming and helping and sharing your story. Take a look at this sweet sentiment from a wife to her spouse. Without you, my life can never be complete. You complete me, my husband. It's Mort and Carrie forever. Well, it warms your heart, doesn't it? Well, here's the bad news. Mort has never spent time with this woman, the woman he believes is his so-called wife, Carrie. Why? Well, according to him, she is trapped in Malaysia and needs $9,000 to get home. Take a look.
I met Carrie on a dating website after my wife passed away. I've had between 1,000 and 1,500 emails from her. She's told me that she wants to be my wife, and I know she's sincere about the whole thing. Carrie's stuck in Malaysia, and she's trying to get back home to me. Our plans are to get married when she gets home. Carrie did ask me for money on the second or third time that I emailed her. I think I've sent Carrie money 500 times. Carrie needed money for her hotel bill, to pay the Malaysian tax on her inheritance, to pay the IRS, the IMF. She needed money for the attorney. She needed money to eat on. The first payments that I sent to Carrie was through local banks. Then I went to Western Union, and then I went to UPS. I sent about $172,000 total to Malaysia trying to get Carrie home. Everybody that I've dealt with has told me that it's a scam. I believe she's real. I believe she's a very nice lady. I really want Carrie to come home. I need her in my life. This will be the greatest present she could ever have, and I can say the same. If I can get her home, I'm sorry.
But Mort's daughters, Kim and Anne Marie, believe their father is being scammed out of thousands of dollars by a catfish, a person who they believe he has never met, even though he claims he has.
I believe my dad is very gullible. If you come to his house to sell him a vacuum cleaner, he's gonna buy it.
I first heard about Carrie about 1.5 years ago.
My dad was looking for a companion. This is a guy who did not know how to turn on a computer prior to this. I definitely called on the whole Carrie story.
I was shocked when I heard he was sending her money. I said, Dad, I'm sorry, but I think this is a scam.
He told me, I wish you would mind your own business because you don't know the whole story.
He truly believed that it's not a scam.
I believe that there's 5 guys sitting around a round table high-fiving every time the money arrives. My mom passed away last year. Dad received the $40,000 life insurance policy, and he wired that money to Malaysia. As we speak, her ashes are at the funeral home. We were waiting for that money to buy her headstone.
We haven't buried her yet. We feel really bad about that.
I believe that he is going to continue sending money if we can't prove whether this is a scam or whether she's real.
Okay. Well, Mort, I'm glad to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that your daughters believe that this person is not real.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you know about Carrie, who you love. She says she's an only child and that both of her parents are deceased, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's part Malaysian. She went to Malaysia for her mother's funeral, right?
Yeah.
And she inherited $2.75 million?
That's what they say.
And she owns a home in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Right.
Okay. And she's an RN, but she's not working right now. She's unemployed.
She just got through with RN school when I met her or got to know who she was.
Okay. And she's stuck in Malaysia, and she's trying to get the inheritance back to the U.S.
Yeah. Her mom's attorney met her at the funeral and told her about the inheritance.
Mm-hmm. So that was a surprise to her.
Yeah, she had no idea at all that she had any money over there.
How did y'all connect initially?
My wife passed away about 4 years ago, and so I got pretty lonesome. I got on this mating game, and this gal, her profile came up, and she's a nice-looking gal. We kind of started hitting it off, and so at that time, I think I sent her about $6,000 to pay the Malaysian tax, a government tax on her money, and then some money for her to eat on, and she was planning on getting out of there, you know, and coming back.
But yet you say you've met her.
Yeah.
Where'd you meet her?
I went on a service call down at, actually it was east of Rapid City on Interstate, and I emailed her like the day before, and I told her that I was going to be coming through Rapid, and I asked her if she wanted to have lunch together.
This was before she went to Malaysia?
Yeah.
And this is how long?
It's been going on for a year and a half.
And how much have you sent her?
A lot of money.
We're talking about a lot of money here, because if you, in September, you sent her $9,810 because you gave us the records for this stuff. Then in October, $20,000. Then November, $18,000. December, $28,000. January, $5,500. It just kept going along until you get to a total of $138,873. Did you ever decide maybe you just ought to go over there to Malaysia and see about this?
Yeah, I don't have a passport, so.
Well, you can get one for less than $138,000.
I realize that.
We go down to the courthouse and they'll give you one down there for about $1.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take a break. I got to take a break. I need to take a break. Mort says he was banned by Western Union from wiring any more money to Carrie Davis in Malaysia. So he found another alternative. Find out how he got $21,000 out of the country and why it could land him behind bars. We'll be right back.
I sent cash in magazines using UPS. I would take probably about this many hundreds, put them in an envelope. I package this money up like this, seal the envelopes up, open the book about the center of the book, and I taped the envelope into the book so it wouldn't fall out. Then I put another envelope in and taped the third one in there. So if they opened the envelope up and took it out, the money would still be in the book, hoping that Carrie would get this, sent it with UPS. We did it several times. It worked fine.
So you've been smuggling money to her in magazines.
That's what I told him. You don't know if the money's going over there for a drug scam, for prostitution.
But you've been smuggling her money in magazines, right?
Well, yeah, I guess that's what it is.
The penalties for doing that, bulk cash smuggled out of the U.S. without reporting it, is imprisonment for a period of up to 5 years, and they can seize all the money and any of the property associated with the person who's sending the money. They can seize your property, they can seize your farms, they can seize everything, and they're being very, very rigid about this because they don't want people sending money out of the U.S. and getting it to the Taliban or other enemies of the United States. And they take this very seriously at this point.
Absolutely. And UPS has been put on notice. They see this continually. They report that to the federal authorities, and they're actively probably have 100 investigations going right now on this type of smuggling.
Well, I couldn't figure out how he was sending it since he was banned from Western Union and everything else. So I asked our local UPS guy if Dad was sending any packages, and he goes, yes, he is. And he called his supervisor, and I got on the phone with her, and she said that they have been investigating Dad for quite a while.
That's not good. Now, one other thing I needed to share with you. Carrie says she's stuck in Malaysia, right? She says she's stuck there, and she's trying to get her $2.5 million inheritance before she returns back to the U.S. But we found that same picture here. This is Carrie, right?
Mm-hmm.
This woman right here that you say you had lunch with in South Dakota, who's now in Malaysia trying to get 5 steel boxes of cash out on a boat, is actually listed on a mail order bride site in the Ukraine. How you reckon that's happening?
I don't know.
By the way, we're showing these pictures knowing that this is probably not the picture of a scammer. Whoever she is, we want her to know her photo is being used to perpetrate a scam. So we're not saying that that person is a bad egg. Mort, it breaks my heart to tell you this, but not one thing about this story confirms to be what you're told it is. Carrie Davis is a made-up persona. I mean, you could do it. You could call yourself Susie Q and go get a picture and cut and paste it up there and start typing stuff up. You've only talked to her essentially once on the phone. The other one didn't connect, and it's I mean, come on. Can you entertain the possibility that this person doesn't exist?
Well, I guess I'll have to believe it. I mean, you've investigated this thing, and all I've done is probably send 1,500 emails to her, and she basically told me that she wants to move over here and get married and bring her all of her money over here and everything. And so.
But you know, the truth is that if that was the case, it would have happened by now, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've been going on for a year and a half on this.
And the thing I want you to do is stop sending money.
Well, I'm not going to do it anymore.
And look, they're investigating you. You can't be doing this.
Yeah.
He wants to send 9,000 when we get back.
You do? You want to send 9,000 when you get back?
No. Well, she wanted me to. Yeah.
Carrie did.
It isn't going to happen. You're never going to meet this person because they don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take pleasure in telling you that.
Yeah, well.
I take pleasure in you stopping sending money. You're a nice man. You don't deserve this. I want you to stop doing this. I got to tell you, you're in front of millions and millions of people right now, a bunch of them from Dakota. I got a sneaking suspicion you may not be as lonely as you were before you came here. Alicia, I know you have an overwhelming amount of medical bills, and when Aflac heard your story, they wanted to help. Aflac provides protection that allows people to focus on recovery because they know they will have money to take care of whatever they need. Now, while you focus on getting better, Aflac stands behind you so that you can stay ahead of your bills. Alicia and Kurt, Aflac wants to give you a check for $25,000 just to help you. There to give you the check is Aflac's Chief Operating Officer, Teresa White. Teresa, thank you so much for being there.
You're just so strong, and we really, really appreciate you sharing your story. And it's just been phenomenal what you've been through, and we hope that this can help you in some small way with your bills.
Thank you very, very much.
So thank you so much, Teresa and Aflac, and also a very special thanks to Doug Kane, former Supervisory Special Agent of the FBI and President of Risk Control Strategies. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship and needs help, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. Thank you so much for being here. So long.